I wasn't the biggest fan of Charlie Kirk. I certainly didn't agree with a lot of his stance on things racially within the black community. I did, however, agree with his take on the transgender topic in terms of what is a woman, science versus feelings. That being said, the tragic part about all this is that we have arrived in a place in society where we are not allowed to have dialogue. And whether you agree or disagree, we should always keep the door open for dialogue.
The passing of Charlie Kirk has stirred a wide range of reactions, but the reflections of comedians Ary Spears and Hughley stand out for their depth and contrast. Spears acknowledged his disagreements with Kirk, especially on issues concerning the black community, while admitting he found common ground with him on debates over gender identity. For Spears, the real tragedy was not only Kirk's death, but the broader reality that society no longer allows for dialogue without it spiraling into hatred and, in this case, violence. He urged that disagreement must never cross into murder and emphasized the need to focus on shared humanity rather than reducing every tragedy to a racial frame. Hugley approached the event from another angle, highlighting empathy as the missing cornerstone of both American life and Christianity. He criticized the hypocrisy of those who dismiss empathy as weakness while claiming to uphold Christian values, pointed out that selective compassion based only on race, appearance, or belief is nothing more than tribalism. For Hugley, Americans' normalization of violence against ideological opponents is not an exception but a defining characteristic of its culture. Together, Spears and Hugley offer two vital perspectives that intersect at the same warning. Without dialogue, without empathy, society risks collapsing into endless cycles of hostility and dehumanization. Their words make clear that Kirk's death is not only about one man, but about the state of communication, compassion, and community in America today. If you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Fried Plantain.
Yo, what up? It's your boy Ary Spears here. Listen, man, in the light of the most tragic recent events that have taken place, we're going to have a lot to talk about on the upcoming episode of Spears and Steinberg podcast, which new episodes are available every Wednesday and Thursday. But yo, check this out. I wasn't the biggest fan of Charlie Kirk. I certainly didn't agree with a lot of his stance on things racially within the black community. I did, however, agree with his take on the transgender topic in terms of what is a woman, science versus feelings. That being said, the tragic part about all this is that we have arrived in a place in society where we are not allowed to have dialogue. And whether you agree or disagree, we should always keep the door open for dialogue, because through dialogue comes change. That being said, that was sad and tragic, and may he rest in peace, and condolences to his family. And like I said, even though I didn't agree with some of the things he said, I agreed with some of the things he said. But he should have been able to voice his opinion without death being his ending, murder.
Spears underscores that disagreement should never escalate into violence, casting the killing as evidence of a societal inability to separate debate from destruction. Spears' reaction deepens when he discusses the brutal murder of a Ukrainian girl, which he describes in stark and unfiltered terms. His outrage targets not only the act itself, but also the ways in which such tragedies are often racialized.
We got to do better as a society, man. We have to be able to communicate how we feel without disagreements leading to murder. And this is the last thing I'm going to touch on. The Ukrainian girl that was heinously, brutally murdered by the brother. That mother should be buried under the jail, because that was gross, it was sick, It was unwarranted, it was uncalled for, and it was effed up. But again, everybody gets caught in their feelings and we turn this into a racial thing when it shouldn't be that. This is about the murder of a human being. Let's keep it on a human level and not make it about race, because that is a slippery slope. I saw with somebody on AI, they created an AI where they said, had this been a black woman, and they showed a picture where she was replaced by a black woman and the surrounding people who were originally around her were black, were now white. And the caption read, had this been a black woman, nothing of Charlotte would be left standing. Everything would be destroyed. To which my reply was, Tulsa, Oklahoma City, recovered. If you know, you know. Now you make of that what you will, but do the history, do the homework, and you will understand my quote. But again, may she rest in peace. It was tragic. It was horrible. It was effed up. And that dude who did that should be punished to the 10th degree. Love.
Spears tries to balance this tension, refusing to reduce tragedy to race while acknowledging that past injustices shape how people interpret such events today. In this, his analysis blends empathy with caution, pressing his audience to mourn the victim as a human being while remembering history's lingering shadows. D.L. Hughley approaches the matter from a different entry point, the role of empathy in public life. He critiques the way conservative America, including religious leaders, often portrays empathy as weakness or failure, a stance he finds both contradictory and dangerous.
I have watched any number of people of all kinds of stripes, people, theologians, politicians, people who consider themselves activists, all kinds of people on the conservative right talk about empathy, and they talked about empathy as if it was a pariah, empathy as it was a moral failing, and they referred to empathy as a weakness. And it's interesting that they would call themselves Christian and be anti-empathy, because that is the tenet, a core tenet of Christianity. So that is being a Christian without the empathy is like being a sushi chef without the fish. But empathy is apparently a weakness to a lot of people, and you never know. But I've always believed and hold this now, that empathy is quintessentially human. Human. It is the core of humanity. It certainly is the core of Christianity, if you call yourself Christ-like. But how is it that you can despise empathy, that you think it is a weakness, that you think that people are susceptible to it, like it's the cold or the flu, and that you despise empathy, but would like it when someone who you love is hurt or killed?
Ultimately, the reactions of Ary Spears and D.L. Hughley underscore a fundamental challenge facing society today: the erosion of dialogue and the decline of empathy in our interactions with one another. Spears emphasizes that disagreement should never become a justification for violence, insisting that open conversation, even with those we strongly oppose, is the only pathway toward understanding and meaningful change. His perspective highlights how tragedy, when reduced to simplistic narratives or racialized frames, can obscure the human cost and deepen societal divides. D.L. Hughley complements this view by pointing to empathy as the essential core of humanity and the true measure of moral and spiritual integrity. In a world where disagreement too often leads to hostility and where empathy is treated as optional, their insights serve as a reminder that our collective humanity depends on the conscious choice to listen, to understand, and to care. Only through these practices can we hope to prevent further cycles of violence and dehumanization, ensuring that tragedies like this are mourned with both justice and a renewed commitment to shared moral responsibility.